Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in lively, sensual Miami, Florida. Happy to be bringing you yet another episode of the world's longest running poker strategy podcast. Great times on the Queen Elizabeth, and now I'm back on land here in the fabulous United States of America. And, getting some mixed reactions from my take on last week's episode, especially my comments about Ren Lin. And some people feel like the punishment is too harsh, and some people think he should be banned for life. Look, guys, I really don't want to belabor this at all, but, my opinion is that we need to clean up the game. I hate that all of the publicity that poker ever gets is bad, negative publicity about this cheating scandal or this high-tech way of people stealing each other's money, and I hate that. And those who represent the game need to be held to a higher standard. I also don't think that Ren deserves to be banned for life or anything like that. And I think that the punishments doled out by GG Poker and its wholly owned subsidiary, the WSOP, are totally fair. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to talk about what's going on next month. Who's going to Vegas? Who's going to the Bahamas? And who's going somewhere else? Like, what else is going on? There's something in Prague, I think. I'm not really sure. Anyway, I will be in fabulous Las Vegas. Any opportunity I have to engage with the fine folks at the Wynn Resort is certainly something that I want to take full advantage of any chance I can get. So I'll be there for the WPT Championship, but I'm actually quite surprised that there's no special WPT gimmick this year. Like a couple years ago, they had the $40 million guarantee for the main event, which they missed by, I think, about $2 million. And so understandably, they didn't want to do that again the following year because apparently heads will roll when guarantees are not met. But if you move back to last year, they did a $5 million free roll trying to promote their online platform. And this time last year, if you guys can remember, there was a lot of hype around the WPT Championship. How can I get into that free roll? Everyone tweeting and doing all sorts of, jumping through hoops to try to get into that $5 million free roll. But this year, there's no such gimmick, if you will, no big advertising, marketing strategy around this event. I'm assuming that is because the WPT is expecting a satisfying turnout without doing anything crazy, because the Wynn at this point has built such a fine reputation for being not only the best place to play in Las Vegas, but maybe the best place to play anywhere in the world. It is just a first-class casino all the way. It's very expensive, but, this is one of those get what you pay for situations. I love the Bahamas. I enjoy visiting the Bahamas. I've performed in the Bahamas, and I have nothing against it, but I will not be playing WSOP Paradise this year. I've never played it, and that is because I would rather be in Vegas. But I want to know from you guys, what are you planning to do? Will I see you in Las Vegas? Are you going to the Bahamas, or are you skipping everything and saving that money for Christmas presents? Let me know. You can find me on Twitter at Clayton Comic. You can also join the TPE Discord, which is free, and there's a link for that in the description of this podcast, and we can discuss this and any other topic of value to you. Now, I want to move on here. I want to review last week's strategy hand, but this time I want to use my favorite tool for improving my poker game, which of course, as you know by now, is GTO Wizard. So again, this hand comes from an online mystery bounty, $109 buy-in, about an hour remaining in late registration, maybe a little less. The blinds were $2,250 and $4,500 with a 550 ante per player. The average stack was 200,000 and we had 330,000, and we had our table covered with our 74 big blind stack. Our M was 33. By any measure, no matter how you slice it, we were doing great in this event. So the player under the gun opened to 9,000 off of a stack of 300,000, and the cutoff made the call off of a stack of 220,000. So 45 big blinds there. The action folds to me in the big blind, and I've got the jack of spades, jack of hearts, and I elected to just call and see the flop. Now, I want to know what you guys thought about that. I was assuming that this would be a 3-bet at least some of the time, but I thought that calling, especially with the raise coming from under the gun, calling with jacks would be totally fine. I didn't think we'd have a lot of 3-bet bluffs, and so we shouldn't have a lot of 3-bet value in this spot. I definitely didn't think shoving would be something to consider with stacks this large. But I did say last week that I felt that 3-betting was probably part of a mixed strategy. But I asked myself, is raising with jacks in this situation pure? Is it mandatory? And it turns out GTO Wizard says yes, it is a pure 3-bet. You either want to make it 10 big blinds, or you can even occasionally shove the whole stack in here. Although if I change the stack sizes and make them a little bit bigger, we no longer want to shove anymore. Obviously, you're not going to just rip it in for 80 or 100 big blinds. But when one of our opponents has 60 big blinds, let's say, we are still supposed to be 3-betting some portion of the time. But the real point here is that my play would be considered a blunder, meaning that the solver never ever calls, as I did here pre-flop. And as a result of that, we can't even do the rest of the hand this week because my hand does not exist in a theoretically optimized world. I would never have jacks on this flop of queen 9-8. So I wanted to go back and see if I played my jacks well. You guys might remember I ended up betting the turn and the river after the flop checks through, and I wanted to check my line using GTO Wizard, but GTO Wizard said, buddy, I've already turned my back on you when you decided to flat pre-flop. And to me, that's one of the powerful things about the solver. Like, suppose I were playing this hand from the under the gun position and one of my opponents was the big blind and it happened to be Isaac Haxton, right? Or someone that we can pretty much expect to follow a GTO strategy 99% of the time. You could pretty much rule out that opponent having jacks because jacks is a hand that never would have just called before the flop. Same could be said for pocket aces, but I think all of us would 3-bet with our aces, but how many of us would always 3-bet with pocket jacks? And that might be the difference between ruling out a certain hand possibly being in an opponent's range or not. I'm literally never supposed to have jacks here. And if you guys want to play with GTO Wizard, it's really fun. You can learn so much about how a perfect robot would play versus another perfect robot. And I've got a great deal for you. You guys can try this tool out for 24 hours for free. And then when you are ready to buy, you'll save 10% off your first purchase just because you used our affiliate link, which is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. You have to use that link in order to receive that discount. So guys, I've been using this program quite a bit lately. I use GTO Wizard to practice. There's a practice mode where you can pretty much just have the wizard deal you a hand and then you see what the right plays are and how close to proper strategy you're actually able to get. And then you can learn where the holes are in your game. The wizard will analyze your play and help you find leaks that you need to plug in order to become a true crusher. So give that a try, gtowizard.com/p/TPE. All right, let's move on, guys. I've got some more hands from that same $109 mystery bounty tournament. I want to talk about two hands I played actually before the one we talked about last week, but not long before. This was probably about 2 hours before late registration ended. And I had just busted out of this event, but since registration was still available and buying in would give me like 35 big blinds, I decided to reinvest another $109 and try to get something going in this tournament. And so I got moved to a new table with a fresh seat and a fresh starting stack of 100,000 chips. And the blinds were 1,400, 2,800 with a 350 big blind ante. So again, this is before the hand that we discussed last week. So spoiler alert, I'm not going to bust out again. So in this hand, the action folds around to the small blind who just limps in for 1,400 more. So it's going to be a small blind versus big blind situation. And I am in the big blind with the 6 of clubs, 5 of clubs. So 6-5 suited. I don't see any reason to raise here. I do like to have a fairly wide raising range, but I like to have blockers. I like to have an ace or a king in my hand. Also, it's important to note that our opponent only has half a starting stack, so just about 22, 23 big blinds. So I really didn't want to raise and then have him shove on me, which I don't know him. It's my first hand at this new table with this new stack. So for all those reasons, I just decided to check and see the flop. And the flop comes 7 of clubs, tray of diamonds, deuce of diamonds. So 7 tray deuce, hero with the 6-5 of clubs. So we've got 3 to a straight flush and a gut shot. And so now with 8,400 in the middle, opponent bets 1 big blind, 2,800, and the action is on me. Now, I think that I can obviously call this. We've got enough equity and a lot of turn cards that can improve our hand. But, I feel like it might be better to raise it up here. Obviously, we don't want to fold. We've got too much going on to fold. And we're getting a pretty decent price, about 4-1 on a call. So where I don't blame you if you just call here, I think it's better to raise it up and put some pressure on this opponent. I feel like he might have a pretty wide range for betting 1 big blind, like any piece of this board, maybe some total bluffs, hoping that I also missed, and that he can pick up a pretty decent sized pot compared with the size of his own stack at this point. Remember, he's only got 23 big blinds. So he could be bluffing, just trying to give himself a good price to possibly increase his stack by like 20% right now. So we don't really want to let him get away with that, especially because we think there are a lot of indicators that he could be fairly wide here. So for that reason, I decided to raise it, and I made it 13,300, so just about 4 times the original bet. And my opponent has left himself now with 46,000 behind when he bets this flop. So at this point, I don't really mind what he does as long as he doesn't shove. I think if he shoves that whole stack in there, I do have to fold, which faulty logic would tell us is a reason not to raise in my shoes in the first place. But that's actually a form of monsters under the bed thinking. Like if you keep yourself from making aggressive plays at opportune moments because you're worried about the worst case scenario, which in this case would be opponents shoving and us losing all of our equity that we probably have in this hand, then you won't make enough aggressive plays. Like the solver is really teaching me, GTO Wizard is telling me we need to be aggressive, way more aggressive on flops than I tend to be. It's fun, especially in position, to just call and see what develops, let the hand kind of play itself. That's not winning poker. This is a spot where I think getting way out of line with just 6 high and some potential just makes sense. So I did that, and Villain threw his hand away. It's also worth noting that if Villain doesn't shove but just calls this raise, the plan is to give up unless I improve on the turn. Obviously, I'll keep betting on any club, any 8, any 4, any pair. So if I hit a 6, a 5, a 4, an 8, or a club, I'm going to shove on the turn if Villain checks to me. So that was the game plan. But if it's any other card, like say it's a king of diamonds or something, I would just give up on the hand, check it back, and then fold on the river if Villain bets into me. But I didn't have to worry about any of that because I ended up taking it down right there on the flop. Right after that, I never saw that guy again because I got moved to yet another table on the very next hand. And this time, I was big blind once again. So I had to actually be big blind twice in a row, which is no fun at all, but it happens to the best of us, I suppose. Still at that 1,400, 2,800 level. And this time, there are 2 players missing from the table. So we're actually running six-handed here, and the action folds to an unknown Russian on the button with 159,000 in his stack, and he min raises to 5,600. Now there is no small blind, so the action's on me in the big blind, and I've got the 5 of spades, 5 of hearts, and 107,000 in my stack. And so facing the min raise with pocket fives, there is no small blind, and the action's on me. Here again, I think calling is probably totally fine, but I decided because my opponent is Russian and very likely to be extremely aggressive at a six-handed table when the action is folded to him on the button and there's no small blind to even worry about. So for that reason alone, I think 3-betting with pocket fives is good. I didn't do the whole 4 big blind raise that I would normally do if the small blind had been in there. I reduced my raise just a little bit. I made it 19,000 after he opened to 5,600, and that was good enough to take another one down. So we can see from these two hands that being aggressive on early streets is often a very effective play in multi-table tournaments. And there again, in my shoes, you might say, well, I really don't want to miss the opportunity to see the flop with my pocket five, so I'd rather just call and hope to hit a set and then check raise from there. And that's understandable. But guys, I think that when we worry about our 3-bet getting 4-bet, again, that's monsters under the bed thinking. There aren't actually monsters under your bed. Just because your opponent is Russian doesn't mean he's going to stick the whole 33 big blinds right in there. In fact, the pre-flop raising war is essentially a thing of the past at this point. You don't really see that much 4-betting pre-flop as you might have, let's say, 15 or 20 years ago. Now, we do sometimes have to fold when he 4-bets with a hand like ace-3 suited or ace-5 suited, which a lot of players will do nowadays. But again, there's just so much junk in his opening range, hands like king-8, king-9, that really can't continue when we 3-bet. But those hands are basically a coin flip versus pocket five. So when we can get those two overcard hands to fold, it's quite a coup because we prevent our opponent from realizing any of his substantial equity. All right, let's do one hand from after the close of registration, and we're actually somewhat approaching the money. We're 90 bust outs away from the money. There are something like 450 players remaining in the tournament. The blinds are 10K, 20K with a 2,500 ante per player. The average stack is 527,000 at this point, and we've got 695,000, which is just about 35 big blinds. Our M is 14. The action folds to the hijack, and he makes it 45,000 off of a stack of 670,000. The cutoff folds, and now I'm next to act on the button with the ace of clubs, 5 of clubs. Taking a peek to my left here, the small blind has 30 big blinds, and the big blind has 17. And both of these players have been fairly loose and aggressive, pretty active at this table. So should I flat here on the button and just see a flop in position, hope that the blinds don't do anything out of line? Or should we go for the 3-bet, hoping to get rid of the blinds and possibly even take this pot down pre-flop as we did with the pocket fives that we just discussed? Well, as you guys who listen regularly know, I love ace-5 suited. It's one of my favorite hands to put into my pre-flop bluffing range. So having potential heat on my left is just going to make me more likely to do that. I want to get rid of those guys, maybe take it down pre-flop, but at least be heads up in position with a very playable hand in a somewhat inflated pot. So again, he made it 45,000 off of a stack of 670,000, which is basically what I have. I've got 695. So he makes it 45, and I say 135,000. And I got my wish. The blinds folded, and the original raiser calls. And now with 320,000 in the middle, the flop comes queen of clubs, 10 of clubs, 9 of hearts. So queen 10, 9. And no, that's not the same flop from last week. That was queen 9, 8. So we don't have to pay off any prop bets on that. But darn close. These queen high wet boards keep coming up for some reason. But here we are. We've got a flush draw and an overcard. And our flush draw is to the nuts. We've also got a backdoor royal flush draw. So I was absolutely thrilled to see this flop. This is a flop that I can play very aggressively. I can put a lot of pressure on my opponent. I might also make a very strong hand or possibly even a nut hand. So yeah, what a great flop for me. And I was so excited to play it. That is until my opponent decided to donk shove 554,000 into 320,000. And at that point, I was less excited, guys. I mean, we start with, like I said, almost the same stack. But how am I supposed to decide what to do in this situation? I mean, would he actually make this play with the nuts? Like, did he just flop the joint with King Jack? And he doesn't want me to see any more cards because he's afraid that I could be drawing live? Is he trying to push me out of this pot with the nuts? Or does he have a worse flush draw? I mean, that would be the best case scenario for me. What if he's got something like 7-6 of clubs? I mean, that would be ideal because in that scenario, he is drawing very slim against my hand. Yeah, I don't know. Would he just play like a queen this way? Would he play some other pair this way? Does he have pocket aces and he decide not to 4-bet? He slow play pre-flop and then he just shoves here hoping I'll call him with a pair of jacks or something or a queen? I don't know. This is very, very strange. You don't really see this very much and it really hurts to flop so well and have to fold. But ultimately that's what I decided to do. I didn't want to risk my entire tournament when I just don't know what the proper range is for my opponent to be making this almost 200% shove. I don't know. What would you guys have done in my shoes facing this all-in bet? And that'll do it for this episode. Guys, please make sure you are subscribed to the podcast and check us out on YouTube now where we show visuals of all the hands for those who want to have something to look at while you listen. My name on YouTube, just like it is everywhere else, is @ClaytonComic. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart.